On Tuesday the 1st of November in 2022, third years of the University of Chichester Creative Digital Technologies, which includes film production, screenwriting, visual effects and 3D animation, attended Aesthetica Short Film Festival, ASFF, in York. Aesthetica was founded in 2011 and is hosted by Aesthetica magazine, which is focused on art culture publications. The festival is also backed by York St John University and the London College of Communication and the British Film Institute. However, Aesthetica did not originally start as a festival, but as a competition, with the winning films being compiled into a DVD each year. The competition increasing popularity due to it receiving so many entries. In 2011, it developed from a competition into a short film festival it is now. ASFF is a celebration of international independent films and is an outlet for supporting filmmakers. The festival is a BAFTA qualifying festival, making all the short films that are seen eligible to win a BAFTA and potentially can lead to other awards. In 2022, Aesthetica contained around 300 films at 15 different locations around York over 6 days. I only attended the first 4, however. Over the time I was at the festival, I tried to make the most of the experience by going to as many events as I could, including workshops, talks, and many other screenings. Being an animation student, I tried to see as many animated films as I could. Along with multiple other genres of films within the animation category were depicted many different ideas, styles, and themes. From depictions of mental health to the whimsical tales being told on history, as well as a comedic storytelling that only could be done with the animation by utilising its over-exaggerated tones and movements. When putting the animation genre together, each of the 3 showings I saw looked to include a wide range of different subgenres in the medium of animation. Like the themes previously stated of mental health, comedy, and historical fictions, the 3 different animated showings I saw were Animation 1, What Is and What Could Be, including Type, a stylistic stop motion about isolation and friendship, Animation 3, Outside the Circle, including films like Salvation Has No Name, my personal favourite, a comedic but dramatic tale of a village people threatened by an outsider, as well as The Sausage Run, that was 5 tales that merged together at the end in a comedic twist, and Animation 4, Connections, containing The Clearing, about a family camping trip that falls deeper into obscurity as the characters try to settle their differences, and Another Presence, which involves a narration of different people's experiences with dementia through the medium of moving chalk drawings depicting their stories. At the festival, all films were put into genres and then subgenres. For example, in the comedy category, the 2 subgenres I saw were What the Hell Is Going On, Comedy 5, and the other title was Gaining a New Perspective, Comedy 1. In the thriller category, I saw Real World Problems, Thriller 4, and in the Art House, Thriller 1. The subdivision of films into subgenres was also in the same for the animation. Animation 3 was called Outside the Circle, as previously mentioned, and Animation 4 was called Connections. Another presence in Animation 4, Connections, was an artistic film with no real narrative structure and a unique blend of style and artwork. This film felt more suited to be part of the experimental or documentary genre. Within Experimental 1, Stories We Tell, which is written in its own description for the category, refers to the films within it being artistically bold pieces that grapple with themes of memory and personal history. Yet the festival opted to put Another Presence, which explores memory, loss, and the impact of people personally, clearly a film more appropriate for Experimental 1 category by its own definition, within the animation section, alongside bizarre stop-frame animation of both surreal slapstick comedy in which the main character marries a fish. Whilst bizarre, The Clearing was an obvious story structure, unlike experimental genre that doesn't conform to normal story structure like Stories We Tell. Therefore, these 2 films were put within the same category solely because the only thing they had in common was animation, when they should have clearly been separated into genres including live-action films with similar themes. My issue is that animation is so diverse, it should not be considered a genre in itself, but to be part of a wider storytelling through the medium of film. To prove my point, I often cite the examples of WALL-E and Rango. Both of these are animated films, with WALL-E being a robotic sci-fi romance set in outer space with dark themes linked to global warming, whilst Rango is an anthropomorphic western that deals with concepts of identity and belonging. If these 2 films were live action, people would consider them different and not part of the same genre. And this is the basis for my argument. That animation should be considered a medium or an art form through which stories can be told, and not a genre akin to distinctly separate categories of horror and comedy, both of which animation is capable of doing. To emphasise my argument further, whilst at Aesthetica, during the Sunshine networking event, I met a scriptwriter called Amelia, pitching an idea to the BBC and Netflix in the next few days, who came to Aesthetica for research and to make industry connections. While talking to her, Amelia mentioned that she was just realised that her show would be perfect as an animated production during the Studio AKA talk, which I will discuss further later. However, when writing her script, she had originally pictured it as a live-action TV series, but due to the subject matter and because she wanted a stylized look that fitted with her narrative, Amelia now envisioned that she wanted the story to be told through animation. She said, and I quote, "It would be perfect for animation." I agreed with her because live action can be restrictive and limiting in design without major funding for visual effects, whilst with animation there is no real life boundaries, allowing creatives to make and do anything. I also had the chance to speak to the director of my favourite film at the event, Joseph Wallace, who made Salvation Has No Name. He spoke to me about his animating process and the different style choices he made for the unique design of his film. For example, he chose to have the sea in the film be made out of bin bag material, and this illustrates the variety of animation styles and the creativity that animation provides, with stop motion animation allowing people to use real world objects in inventive ways. Aesthetica is my main case study for this essay, yet it is important to show how the rest of the film industry views animation, as these attitudes most certainly have an impact on Aesthetica. For example, parts of my research I'll be looking at award shows like the Oscars, with its Best Animated Film and Best Picture category. Comparing film festivals and award shows together gives us a sense of the industry's stance on animation. While award shows are a great way to promote animated films to the public, as well as showcase the best animation has to offer, award shows like the Oscars, for example, don't give animated films the same amount of love as they do to other live-action films. With only 3 animated films ever being nominated for Best Picture, with none of them winning, which were Beauty and the Beast in 1991, Up in 2009, then Toy Story 3 in 2010. With many films that should be nominated for Best Picture getting overlooked, for example like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, one of the most well-received films of 2019 with its incredibly influential animation style and storytelling only being nominated for Best Animated Feature, when it could have even been nominated for many of the other technical awards as well as Best Picture, like Best Original Screenplay, or Best Sound, or Best Film Editing. With Spirited Away in 2003 also, in my opinion, eligible for all these awards too, but only receiving Best Animated Feature Film, with it being one of the most influential films to me and an experience that I will not forget. The Oscars creating a category only for the animated film medium feels like a way to sideline the animated films, for them not to be a part of the others. While they can be nominated for a lot of the other awards, like the technical ones stated, will always be competing with each other in the animated category instead of competing with the wider range of films that are released. At Aesthetica, I had the opportunity to go to the VR labs and experience stories in VR. This was a new addition to the festival. Whilst there, I got to see 3 different short films in VR: Genesis, Bunker VR, and Castle of the Unknowing. Genesis showed the birth of the world, all the way from the origins of mankind, and this was an amazing experience that I convinced my friends to try it too, which they all did and very much enjoyed. VR Labs was a perfect example of experience culture that Aesthetica would promote. For many people, the only way to experience these films was at Aesthetica, as they would not have access to VR headsets or films. Furthermore, the films are fairly new forms of immersive storytelling that will only increase over time, with people present only having access to VR Labs, giving them a unique experience. As the first people to try it are the new experience at the film festival. The curators of the event compiled many different genres and different film types into VR Labs. I don't know how many VR film applicants they had submitted, as it's a very new and difficult way of filmmaking. This meant that there was something for everyone to enjoy and to choose. Of the 3 films I saw, 2 were made entirely using animation and CGI. Genesis was about the birth of the world and was done entirely using CGI to depict the environments, animals that lived in that time. Even the humans at the end of the film were animated. The second short film I saw was Bunker VR, This was a horror genre and focused on a couple wandering through a bunker that turned into a museum, with a ghost following and scaring them until one of them gets attacked. This was created using live action, and the production was restricted, and the final scare was clearly someone in a mask. The last film I saw in VR was Castle of the Unknowing, made using CGI. This was an experimental film which placed the audience in the elevator that opened onto a cave and led to a giant swan. The swan then proceeded to do a form of ballet. It was both odd and very relaxing, as well as being surreal, and that it looked lifelike but was obviously animated. It was a vivid experience that stuck with me so much that I wished I could see it again. However, this was only possible at Aesthetica. For these two specific films, neither would have been possible to make without CGI and animated visual effects, highlighting that these essential parts of the new type of filmmaking process. One of the most interesting events I saw at Aesthetica was the talk from Philip Hunt from Studio AKA, who was speaking about animation, its process and relevance within media. Studio AKA deal with 3D, 2D animation. While I focus mostly on 3D animation, most of the animated films at Aesthetica were 2D and stop motion. I would have liked to have seen more 3D films, however. For this essay, I'm focusing on all types of animation as a medium as a whole. During his talk, Philip Hunt was showing us the process of creating a film the company had been working on recently for children and families, called Here We Are, a 3D animated short film based on a book of the same name. Hunt first spoke about the inspiration for the animated film that he also applied to live action films. He claimed that when working out how to adapt the book, you don't want to just make the book move, you want to do something new with it, create your own thing. Animation has such a wide range of styles and methods that it can be difficult for creators to choose whether to make a project 3D or 2D. When they have to decide whether it should be stylized or photoreal, cartoony, classic animation like Pixar and Disney. Next, when trying to figure out what the film is about, they look for a theme, and the theme they chose to help you when you're lost, and when you're lost, start with what you know. They carried this idea through the original book, and was adapting of a boy's dad teaching him about the world. While aimed at kids, the film deals with real-life scenarios that everyone can learn from and use, such as navigation by the stars. In another piece of work Studio AKA were working on, called Black Earth Rising, the director used animation as he didn't want to use actors to fill the roles of real-life people to give them the impression that they had been replaced in their own story. He decided on the visual medium of animation to ensure that potentially harrowing images were depicted, whilst possibly graphic were at least depicted through the filter of animation, rather than looking like real life. The art form of animation being considered a genre is dying out, I feel, as many people are seeing their potential at creating thought-provoking and deep stories, whilst from my research and talks with others, it is a platform to tell different stories from other genres. On the other hand, the industry feels safer in a way putting it in its own category, as a way to separate it from live action, considering it not worthy. Another argument to be made though about live action and CG films is from the newest Lion King, with many calling it the live action Lion King when it was made completely through animation and visual effects, as well as many Marvel films that rely so heavily on visual effects and CGI that there is an argument for them to be considered animated as well. But I digress. My point is that these films were put into an animated category by the creators of Aesthetica purely because of their look of being animated, rather than the deep subject matter or thought-provoking stories that it could and did tell. When looking at animated films purely for their look and style, you take away from their message and impact. Putting it into the same category with films unlike them can cheapen their meaning.